Hello all of you lovely people, it's Jules here for WhatCulture.com, and today I want to talk about sidekicks. Every good superhero has to have somebody waiting in the wings to not only take up the mantle should the worst happen, but help them out in a pinch if they get into trouble. And if a sidekick is good enough, you can't really think of one without the other. But unfortunately, it's not always an easy ride, and across the many years that comic books have been in existence, there have been a fair few shocking times that sidekicks have quit. It'd be like me losing Ewan, my son, if he turned against me and tried to overthrow me and become the egg daddy of What Culture Comics. Oh, I don't want to plant the seed in his mind. Anyway, with this worrying thought, I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 shocking times that sidekicks quit. Number 10, GARTH/AQUALAD. AQUAMAN. Now there have been a couple different AQUALADs, and here we're going to focus on GARTH, an outcast Atlantean with powers similar to Aquaman. Because of the fact that he was different from others in his civilization, he was ostracized and grew up on his own. One day though, he stumbled across Aquaman, helped him out of a jam, and in doing so became his sidekick. But as the years went on, Aquaman grew more and more distant and concerned with his own family and duties as King of Atlantis. Things grew steadily grimmer for Garth because he almost lost an arm, was forced to fight against a giant sea monster to the death, and lost the love of his life during Crisis on Infinite Earths. This finally caused Garth to snap, and he left Atlantis. Years later, now as a superhero in his own right called Tempest, he finally made amends with Aquaman, but did so as his equal. Number 9, Nyx. Spawn. Spawn has been around now for almost 3 decades, so it seems reasonable that he would pick up a sidekick in that time. Now, Nyx had been interested in magic since she was a young girl, becoming a Wiccan in adulthood. These abilities allowed her to sense Spawn during a time that he was powerless and lost, who was just wandering around the world as a mere human. Nyx tracked him down, helped him to regain his powers, and became his assistant and sidekick, using her magic to help him however possible. Because she surrounded herself with magic, Nyx was privy to all sorts of arcane information, and at one point she discovered that she could rescue a friend's soul from hell if she was willing to steal Spawn's power to do so. It turns out that Nyx was very willing and able, gaining Spawn's suit and abilities in the process, ultimately releasing her friend from her torment, but unknowingly costing Spawn his powers. The demon Mammon played Nyx for a fool, double-crossing her so that she had to forfeit Spawn's suit as well as her own magic to him. Realizing what she had done and what she had cost Spawn, she was on the run for months, until he finally caught up to her and forgave her for what she did. Number 8, Jason Todd/Red Hood, Batman. The story of Jason's death is comics legend. For years, his death was considered one of the very few permanent ones in comics. In 2004, however, Jason returned as Red Hood. While him being alive was shock enough, what Jason had become was even more so. Jason had always been portrayed as a daring and brave Robin, a carefree kid who loved being at Batman's side. Instead of returning to Bruce as the Robin he had been, his resurrection in a Lazarus pit had made him a violent sociopath, completely opposed to everything Batman stood for. He took over the gangs of Gotham, killed criminals with no remorse, and happily fought the Bat family. His greatest anger, though, was reserved for Bruce, who had still not killed the Joker despite taking Jason away from him all those years ago. After a few years, though, he and Bruce formed an uneasy truce, but the Jason Todd of old is completely gone. Number 7, WIKABI, Black Panther. The MCU's WIKABI was a staunch ally of the Black Panther. They were best friends while growing up, and both became important parts of the kingdom of Wakanda. WIKABI freely offered advice and opinion to his friend and his father on military and security issues. WIKABI was also married to the head of the Royal Guard, Okoye. They did, however, have differences of opinion when it came to Wakanda's past and future. WIKABI's parents were killed by an arms dealer who Black Panther's father swore that he would bring to justice. For 30 years, though, he could not do so, leaving WIKABI to have faith that his friend, as the new king, would find the killer. When Killmonger arrived in Wakanda with the arms dealer's body and a claim to the throne, WIKABI immediately turned on the Black Panther, feeling that he was too soft to govern and believing in Killmonger's vision for a Wakanda that ruled itself. After a final pitched battle between supporters of Black Panther and Killmonger, WIKABI, realizing that he had been wrong and with his own wife ready to kill him, laid down his weapons and surrendered. Number 6, Cassandra Cain / Batgirl, Batman. Trying to explain former Batgirl Cassandra Cain's backstory would actually require several of these pages and a likely flowchart or two to make sense of things. For our purposes though, Cassandra is a world-class martial artist, assassin, and reader of body language. Appearing during the No Man's Land storyline, she proved herself to Batman and accepted the role of Batgirl, which she held for some time. But in a controversial storyline set during 1 year later, Cassandra went through a drastic change of perspective. She grew disillusioned with the Batman family, including framing Tim Drake for murder and taking control of the League of Assassins. To top off her turn to the dark side, Cassandra joined villain Deathstroke's Teen Titans East, seeing him as a father figure. Admittedly, she was being mind-controlled at the time, but the ease with which Deathstroke gained her favor was quite startling. She eventually was rescued by Robin and vowed to kill Deathstroke. Batman, apparently a big believer in second chances, asked her to start being Batgirl again as part of the Outsiders, which understandably caused the other members of the team to be quite upset. Number 5. Microchip. Punisher. Microchip Lieberman, usually known as Micro, started off as an ally of Frank Castle in The Punisher. Micro was a legendary computer hacker who retired after coming too close to organized crime. His nephew, trying to follow in his footsteps, stole data from the crime lord the Kingpin, who had him killed. And it was while Punisher was investigating this murder that Micro began working with him. Microchip helped Frank with acquiring weapons, technology, and intelligence, and built safe houses for Frank, handled finances, and provided invaluable mission assistance. Over the course of a decade of Frank's work, Micro felt more and more that Frank had gone over the edge and away from his original mission, and eventually turns on him working with some of the very gangsters that Frank had sworn to destroy. This leads to a final showdown between the two, including a gun battle and arrival of S.H.I.E.L.D., which unfortunately results in Micro's death. 15 years later, after a series of events that included Micro being brought back to life and then him killing a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, Frank had another final showdown with Micro, this time slashing his throat. Oof, that man sure knows how to hold a grudge. Number 4. Damian Wayne. Batman vs. Robin DC Animated Movie Universe. Batman vs. Robin adapts the Court of Owls storyline. In it, Damian Wayne, who has only newly discovered that Bruce Wayne is his father, is finding it difficult to reconcile his League of Assassins training with Batman's crime-fighting methods. While pursuing Toyman, Damian meets the head enforcer of the Court of Owls, Talon. As Damian watches, Talon kills Toyman and tells the new Robin that he has potential to be more. Damian begins joining Talon for patrols of the city, and then Talon takes him, pun intended, under his wing and encourages his violent nature. When Batman attempts to intervene, Damian quickly turns on his father and they engage in a protracted fight, leaving Batman bloody and bruised. Now granted, much of the damage that Bruce takes is due to pulling punches and trying to protect Damian during a fall, but still, it is a thorough beating. Damian joins Talon and the court, but quickly realizes that he was just expendable. He eventually regains perspective and rejoins his father before admitting that he needs to spend time discovering himself and heads for a monastery in Tibet. And you know what? The movie does an excellent job showing this struggle and ultimate resolution. Number 3. Roy Harper, Green Arrow. DC Comics made a very strong point of their 1970s Green Arrow / Green Lantern comics being relevant, edgy, and covering some genuinely serious topics. This included an infamous storyline where Oliver Queen finds out that his ward and sidekick Roy Speedy Harper is unfortunately a heroin addict. Speedy, a long-established character, started using heroin as a result of depression and loneliness. Like many addicts, he began selling his possessions for drugs, including equipment that he and Green Arrow used. When Green Lantern and Green Arrow found Speedy using heroin, Oliver reacted violently, attacking him and offering him no sympathy whatsoever. Oliver kicked Roy out, leaving Green Lantern to take care of him and get him to treatment. After becoming drug-free, Speedy, who no longer trusts his mentor nor feels that he owes him anything, leaves Oliver and sets out on his own, first continuing to use the name Speedy and then later becoming Arsenal. Number 2. Harley Quinn, Harley Quinn show and comic. Harley Quinn was the breakout character of Batman the Animated Series. Starting out as simply a girlfriend and sidekick to the Joker, she grew into a complex and nuanced character that has become beloved by fans. Their relationship, though, was clearly portrayed as abusive, both physically and mentally. He left her to be arrested or to die countless times, only to take her back when it was convenient for him to do so. There are times, however, where Harley does get her own back, and it's hard not to cheer her on as she does so. In issue 25 of her comic, Harley finally confronted Joker in Arkham. Finally giving in to years of repressed anger and hate, she proceeds to both physically and verbally beat him down in a series of panels that are equally jaw-dropping as they are satisfying. After telling him that killing him would be exactly what he wants, she leaves him for good. Moving to Harley's animated life in Harley Quinn, an elaborate trap set up by Poison Ivy and the Riddler finally convinced Harley that Joker will always put his love-hate relationship with Batman before their own. While at first the realization crushes her, it does lead to an epic showdown at Joker's hideout. And number 1, Dick Grayson, The New Batman Adventures. Dick Grayson was not only the original Robin, he was also one of the original sidekicks in comic history. Starting in the 1940s, Dick was a constant companion to Batman, accompanying him on adventures after Bruce took him in as an orphan and trained him. The two of them became a fixture of comics, movies, serials, radios, TV shows, and animation. Eventually, Dick grew up and became Nightwing. The New Batman Adventures episode Old Wounds told this story as a flashback as Dick regales the new Robin, Tim Drake, with the account of how he left Batman. After finding out in the same conversation that his girlfriend Barbara Gordon is Batgirl and that Batman knew this and still put her in danger, Dick clearly no longer trusts Bruce. After berating him, he turns to leave and Bruce attempts to stop him. Dick punches him in the face, strips off the cape and mask, and then walks away, never to be Robin again. Dick eventually patched things up with Bruce, but on different terms, as a peer and not a sidekick. And he seemed to have started a trend because virtually every Robin since Dick has at one point left Bruce. Perhaps he should have stuck to adventuring with his dog Ace. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 shocking times that sidekicks quit. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below, as well as any other choices that you would have had for this list. I would love to read what you guys think. If you want to chat to me further, you can do so over on Twitter at RetroJ with a 0. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.